Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here's your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Good morning and welcome back to Faith in Our Hometown, our weekly conversation here in the greater Joplin area about faith and the intersection between where we live and our neighbors and how we all think and try to function together as people who care about each other here in the Joplin area. This morning, my guest is going to be Gallagher Cardona. Gallagher works for Life Choices Health Network. And Gallagher, thanks for coming back on the show. We had you on several weeks ago. And one of our conversations after we got finished was about some of the work that Gallagher does, especially with the young men that Life Choices trains. We've got a bit of a crisis here in our contemporary society, and that is that many times people are growing up without dads and without a fathering influence. And so Gallagher is involved in that work, and we are going to continue to talk about that a little bit when we come back. We are going to be right back after this Mercy Minute. Thanks for joining us for Faith in Our Hometown this morning.
If there's a family history of breast cancer, especially breast cancer at an early age, that's a very high risk factor for breast cancer, and those patients should have early surveillance and should be aware of some of the signs and symptoms of early breast cancer. Other risk factors would include maintaining an optimal weight. If one carries excess weight, that increases baseline estrogen levels, and that seems to increase the risk of breast cancer. Those would be the main risk factors.
Welcome back. My guest this morning is Gallagher Cardona, who works for Life Choices. Gallagher, you've been on a couple months ago. You joined us to talk about some of the work that you were doing, and we got involved in an after conversation about the fatherless society that we live in, and we decided we wanted to talk about that a little bit. So that's why you're back this morning. Yeah. So again, we acquaint our listeners with who you are and what you do and what Life Choices does in general, and then let's talk a little bit about this phenomenon.
Yeah, so my name is Gallagher Cardona. I have the privilege of working at Life Choices. I'm the Extension Services Coordinator. So with that position, I do a lot with the Fatherhood Initiative program. And what that looks like is when a young man comes to the clinic, and the clinic it's a sexual health clinic. We do quite a bit there. We help individuals who are in a crisis situation, whether that be an unplanned pregnancy, sexually transmitted infection or disease. We want to offer them counsel, resources, things to overcome that crisis. And so our initiative, or our program that we started in 2013 specifically, really addresses the issue of fatherlessness, and I should say indirectly addresses that by helping young men to step into the role of father. So we do that with providing, again, resources, parenting classes, and again, meeting one-on-one with these guys who, many of which find themselves, are expectant fathers, and the majority of which are come from a fatherless home or didn't have a father.
Okay, and you've discovered that, through the work that you've done, is that many of the folks that you're dealing with have not had
That's correct.
Some kind of a father figure. Okay? Give me an example of somebody that you dealt with where suddenly you realized that what you were really dealing with was the fact that he just never had anybody to show him how it was done.
Yeah. I've been aware of this issue of fatherlessness, but it really became real to me doing this work. And it was something that, again, time and time again, there was a reoccurring theme meeting with these guys and finding out, I could tell you, I hear it time and time again. Oh, I know how to be a good dad, and I'm interested. I'm a father myself. I have 3 kiddos. I lean forward. Really, please give me your pointers. Genuinely, and they tell me I know exactly how to be a good dad. I'll just do the opposite of what my dad did. I hear it time and time again. My father wasn't there. He left when I was, he left when I was born, or I never got to meet him, and so it really again, grabbed onto me as a reoccurring theme, and it's something that we really wanted to address. And so a specific story early on, when we first began the program, there was a young man who was, involved. He grew up in the inner city. And he, gangs and different things like that was in his environment growing up, and he didn't have a father. So he was in the area. His girlfriend had found out that she was going to be the mother of his child, and so he came to us for a pregnancy test, and we met that first time. We had an amazing opportunity to just talk about his future and what does that look like. What are your hopes and dreams and aspirations for the future? And for the first time, he got to sit down and think, well, this is what I want, and given even with the past that he came from, he wanted to be a good father. He wanted to be, really wanted to show his girlfriend that he can be the man that he wants to be for her, and the father that he never had. So after that initial conversation, we exchanged. We have a dedicated men's text line, and I gave that to him, and we stayed in contact for several months. And when he was going through different transitions in his life, he'd come in and say, "Hey, I really want to better myself in this area," and he actually started attending college and different things, And
great.
So now, fast forward, about 9 months later, I get a call, and the young man says, he said, "Hey, G," so he calls me G. She's gonna have the baby. We really don't have anyone, he doesn't have a lot of family in the area. He's like, would you be there? Would you be there with me? And
wow.
so I got to go and
you to be the surrogate grandpa.
Right?
There you go. It's good.
So I was there.
Welcome to my world.
Right? Yeah. So I was able to be there with him, and then the young man and the woman looked at me and said, we would be honored if you would name our baby girl. Wow. And it was it really was such an honor, and I was able to be there with them through that experience, and even now as months have passed, a couple of years now that have passed, and getting to watch this young man who didn't have a father be a father, an amazing father, and continue to grow and develop in that area.
Yeah,
so.
Well, that's a great story. And again, what an honor for you, to be able to do that. I mean, again, it's just sometimes when you're in a position of helping someone to figure out something that they didn't know how to do, there are all kinds of great rewards and benefits that come from it, and that's a great one. So this is unfortunately a little more common than we wish it was.
Yeah.
So go ahead, wake up our listeners this morning. They're sitting there with their coffee this morning. They are just relaxing and thinking, I'm going to kick back and have a nice Sunday morning. Open their eyes a little bit with some of the statistics about what can happen when you grow up without a dad.
Yeah. So currently in America today, we're looking at 24 million children are growing up in homes without their father. So that actually in 2011, the census showed that's 33%, or a third. 1 out of 3 children grew up in fatherless homes. Now we're looking at more most recent data is showing 43%. So 43% of children are growing up in homes without a father. Now, obviously, that has huge implications. 90% of homeless and runaway children come from fatherless homes. 85% of children with behavioral disorders come from fatherless homes. 85% of all youth in prison come from fatherless homes. That's 63% of youth suicides, 71% of high school dropouts. Basically, children who grew up in fatherless homes are 7 times more likely to end up as a teen parent, become pregnant as a teen.
Teenager.
So
yeah.
And those are just again a few.
Those are just a few. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not that I want to sound like an alarmist, but I think we should be alarmed.
Yeah.
It's a pandemic in our society.
It is.
I mean, this is not something that just happens once in a while, but if at 43%, we're approaching half of, our kids are growing up without, half our young men are growing up without a father. Yeah. And again, the ramifications of that can't be underscored, enough. And I think sometimes religion gets beat on a little bit because we try to just keep saying, no, we want intact families. We want, husbands and wives to stay together. We want, there to be full households, with mom, dad, and kids, and all those things. And sometimes we get pushed at a little bit because you're just being old-fashioned or all those kinds of things. And I'm just like, but unfortunately, the statistics bear it out.
Yeah.
We just know that kids are better off with a mom and a dad. We know that that kids are better off when their household is intact and when they get a lot of those things. Now, I understand not in every instance, but the statistics bear out that we really have an issue on our hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the last 60 years, there's been a 400% increase in fatherless homes. It's something that, again, now we're seeing so much, and it really is an exponential issue. The fatherless is contributing to fatherless, and it just is creating this cycle. And so, again, I can't stress enough when a young man tells me, that I'm just going to be what I didn't have. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. You can't. Not knowing something is not knowing how not to do something is not knowing how to do something.
Right. Right.
So.
And again, when they say, well, I'm going to do the opposite of my dad, well, that's not quite good enough, which is why you're doing the program that you're doing.
Exactly.
So, what does the program look like? What do you try to accomplish with the guys who realize that they need some assistance? Because, obviously, folks volunteered to be taught some of these things. They're the ones that are self-selecting and saying, I don't know how to do this. Teach me how.
Yeah.
What do you teach them?
Yeah, so, the way the program really works is that we want to meet the young man, or not just young man. I've met with plenty of guys older than me, but we want to meet the man exactly where they're at. That happens through a conversation. Sitting down with them and just kind of listening to hear what is the need. Now we are going to present them with all the resources that we offer through Life Choices Health Network. We're going to present them with all the plethora of classes that are offered, relationship classes, parenting classes, whether it be an expectant couple or whether it be for parents who have 3 or 4 kids, that just want to figure out issues like managing difficult behavior and setting boundaries. So we're gonna share those things with them. But again, through that conversation, things will arise. Things, and they always do. I've even met with. Although I've presented the statistics of, this is what it looks like, or here's, it can give you an idea in your mind that, okay, well, those least fortunate individuals in society are dealing with. No, I can't tell you how many guys who, very professional individuals who would say, look, this was a crisis for me as well. My father wasn't there, and because I did not receive that validation or affirmation from my father, I sought that through being successful, and I strive for success. I strive to finally validate myself as a man, because I didn't have that validation. So we'll talk through these sort of things and kind of what does that look like? Where are you getting your validation and stuff like that? So yeah, we have we have quite a bit that we can offer them, but the majority of it is going to come through case-by-case situation.
Sure.
So
finding out what they need is very important, because again, we can have all the programs in the world, but if we're not giving them what they want or what they need to know, and they don't want to grab it, well, then then we're just kind of like the teacher's voice off of Charlie Brown. Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah.
When somebody wants to do those things. All right, well, we're going to come back in a little bit and talk a little bit more about this. How do we do remedial fathering classes? But we're going to come back after a little bit of a break. This is Faith in Our Hometown. We're glad you joined us this morning. And again, we're talking about the fatherless society that we live in.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
I haven't worked so much with college students through the years. I've seen this phenomenon myself grow in my own experience, in terms of a fatherless society. We're talking this morning about what can we do about a fatherless society. Some of the work I did with, like for example, advising a fraternity, those kinds of things on a college campus, I began to see more and more across the course of the last several years that there were more and more guys who just never had a dad. I became the surrogate dad,
Yeah.
Now of course, my role is kind of set up for it. Everybody calls me father, I even have a shirt, the old Dr. Seuss, father of all things. And I should have brought it to this morning, but nonetheless. But you were in a privileged position to be able to teach young men who have said, and I always felt this way, when somebody identified me and said, okay, I want you to teach me something, okay? I've decided I trust you. I want you to teach me something, and this is what I need to know. So what are like some of the courses? So like, what do you teach? Just give us some synopsis of what do you teach in the parenting class? What do you teach in the relationships class? Or what do you teach about some of those things? Because a lot of it is just character formation.
That's exactly right.
So what do we do? How do we help these guys?
Yeah, I would say the number one way of helping, is obviously being available. Being available to be a listening ear, being available to, again, walk alongside these guys, and sometimes that'll look like offering them your card and having them come back to the office or whatever the case may be. And for us, it's understanding what is the role of father. Let's break that down a little. What is this role of being a father? And one of the things that happens in being a father is that you are instilling a sense of identity. You're giving your children really a vision for the future. You're offering that as you are a father, as you are a protector for your children, for your son, your daughter. As you're really, that role is one that's a guide for your children. And so we want to do that, just as you said, through character formation. We want to help them to see the different things that maybe they didn't get from a father, but they very much have accessible to them if they are willing to put in the work to say, okay, this is important enough to me. I'm going to put boots to the ground. We're going to get this done. I want to be this good father. And so that's what I wanted. That's my desire. I want to connect with their desire, because if I just enter the room and say, this is all the things you need, well no, that's
exactly.
They would just look at me like I'm crazy. But if I ask them, so what is it that you truly want?
Okay.
And they start connecting with that desire. I want to be a good father. I genuinely want. They will start connecting with that. Then we have a platform of which to go forward. Now we have something to offer them, And for so many, again, of the men that I have the opportunity to meet with, they grew up in tough homes or fatherless is part of their situation. But something that's so important for them to understand, for me to understand, for all of us to understand, is the person that we are. Is a result of two things. One is our environment. See, that's going to be, again, like we come from a fatherless home. We rich, poor, white, black, whatever, however we were raised. All of those things contribute to our environment, right? Well, the second thing is our reaction to our environment. It's where we ask the question: am I going to be a product of my past? Am I going to? Yes, I grew up, with. My father wasn't there. I was abused, drugs, alcohol, whatever the case may be. Yes, that was my environment, but am I going to be a product of my past, or how am I going to respond to this? And so, again, we want to offer practical tools on whatever the situation may look like, how to be of an overcoming mindset. Sociologists will call that being a transitional character. And that is this idea of, yes, there are these generational cycles. Now, all the research shows, if you come from a divorced home, there's a good chance, a higher chance that you are, yourself going to be divorced. Now, does that mean that it has to happen no, not at all.
No, and actually we're hoping that more people can break that cycle. But unfortunately, sometimes the situations get us set up to repeat when we don't even want to. That whole phenomenon of, I swore I'd never say what my mother or my father said, but I'm saying it anyway, or I'm doing it anyway. We all are creatures of our upbringing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so how do we break that cycle? How do we do some of that? How do we help them to, to make that those good concrete choices for themselves? They're going to keep them from becoming a statistic. How do we do that?
Yeah, and I think one of the ways that one of the things that we really want to express or help all of us really learn is that, especially when it comes down to being a father, when it comes to parenting is more caught than it is taught. So in other words, what that means is, the whole adage, the whole thought, do as I say, not as I do. Obviously, that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Our children are going to model directly what it is that they're seeing us do. So if I want to truly invest in my children, then I'm going to invest in myself in a way that I am growing and developing myself into the man that I want to see my child grow up to be. I want to, the way that I love my wife, the way that I respect, my wife, and the way that I provide for my children. I want to include them in that. One of the greatest joys of being a father, I remember a time I do some work with my hands, and I was building some stuff for the house, and my son, I include him in that. He's got his little tool belt. He's got his little stuff to kind of, walk alongside Daddy and do the things that I'm doing. And I was, at the office, and I get a text from my wife and a little video with it, and my son was, wearing his tool belt, and he's underneath the high chair, and he's doing something. He's like, "Mommy, look, I work hard like Daddy." And it really touched me. It really meant so much to me to think, that's what it looks like. To be a father, we instill these things, that way. So now, obviously, our curriculum's not going to necessarily be like that, but it will. It's pointing them in that direction.
Sure.
It's giving them practical tools of what that looks like. Our relationship class, understanding what it is to truly have, the foundational elements of a relationship: trust, honesty, communication. It's teaching on these aspects, and for so many, it's illuminating. It's opening their eyes to a whole nother world. Because see, the thing is, our perception is our reality. What we grew up in, that is our reality, And so for so many of these young men and women, who have grown up in these tough circumstances, that is their reality. That's how life operates. That's what, that's the kind of mindset. So to be a transitional character, one who breaks the cycle, we need to get out of that mindset. We need to be able to look and say, you know what? No, there's another way to live life. When you get surrounded by a group of people that are all joining in, and saying, we want to better ourselves. I want to be a better husband, a better father, then you start to learn from one another, and you start to hear things like, wow, I never knew that even existed. I didn't know that, respect, that's what that looks like. I didn't know that, I never knew how to have a good relationship because I never saw one modeled for myself. So it's breaking down those foundational elements so that, so they can prosper, we can all in community, address this issue.
Sure. So. And I think that this is one of those reasons why I don't like when, the grandpas and grandmas, the wisdom figures of the community, head off for, Florida or Texas during the winter, and then they're gone. I just don't like it. It's done something weird in our society. And, no offense to anybody, I guess, who does that, but I'm just saying, I think there would be some benefits from you staying home. So let me finish my thought. Okay? Part of the deal here is that we need those wisdom figures. We need those mentors. We need those folks to be around and to help lead that charge. One of the things that I do now when I'm together with the guys in the fraternity that I've advised for all these years, one of the things I do is I'll just start baiting them to say, tell me what you love about being a dad.
Yeah.
And then I watch them as they start to talk about what their kids mean to them. And they're all listening to each other. Yeah. And then they start jumping in and they start piling on because they're like, yeah, the first time they look at you and say, you taught me that, Dad. It's like, and I mean, so I'm sitting back listening to all of these new fathers talk about those things. And again, once in a while, one of them will look at me and say, I learned that from you. Those are moments when we can't stress the importance of that showing people through example how that stuff is done.
Yeah.
Because again, nobody taught. I mean, How did I learn how to be a good father figure? From my own dad and the other good dads in my life that I saw. How did I learn how to be a good priest father? From watching other priest fathers do their thing. And you can spend all the time you want, studying it in a book, but those are the lessons that you absorb like little sponges, like all of our kids are. So I love, one of the great things about being a priest is on Sunday morning when you're just watching everything else, because I'm preaching or whatever, but I'm always watching exactly what's going on in that congregation. So I love watching a dad, father his kids even in the middle of church. I love watching a mom do that, watching her be a good mom. I love those things. So 30 seconds or less. What can folks do to support you guys in your fathering efforts at Life Choices? What can they do?
Time, talents, and treasures. So if you have time, if you have the desire to mentor our young men, then yes, time, talents. If you have talents, you're able to contribute that way. Treasures, really that's just the finances that go into supporting a program that can make the impact that we genuinely want to make.
Okay, so, and if they want to do that, they can get in touch with Life Choices?
That's correct.
So is it lifechoices?
Yes.
Okay.
Life. I don't actually have that on top of my head.
Well, we'll get it for you. But we're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute. Thanks for joining us here this morning. We've been talking about the Fatherless Society, and we'll be right back to wrap up our show in just a moment. Stay tuned.
I thought about bariatric surgery because the struggles I've had with my weight all my life. Every time I tried a new fad diet or a new diet, it seems like I always put back more weight on than I lost. And then of course that leads to a very downward cycle of being very hard on yourself, being very depressed. It's been amazing. I mean, it's been shocking. I feel like a whole new person, inside and out. It's just not with the surgery, but also with the care team and everything involved. The dietitian, the therapy, and everything has been, I feel reborn. I'm able to do things that I want to do. I'm not held back by my weight. I'm not held back by my depression. I'm not held back by the emotional weight and physical weight I was carrying around. I feel free. I feel like I can do anything.
Well, thanks for being with us here this morning for Faith in Our Hometown. My guest this morning has been Gallagher Cardona, who works for Life Choices Health Network. Again, if you want to be in touch with them, it's choicesmedical.org. We did figure that out. We had one of those moments where we looked at each other and went, wait a minute, we know this, but we can't say it. All right? But we've been talking about how we help our whole society to fix what's wrong with it. How do we help a fatherless society? Well, we do it by being good fathers. And that's probably the only thing that's going to fix it, because when we see what it is to be a good father and we model that for someone else, then they catch the desire to do the same thing. This is one of those things that cuts across all boundaries, all race, all creed, all political choices, whatever it is. Our society has a pandemic, and it is that we need to be better fathers and to teach other people how to do the same. Thanks for joining us for Faith in Our Hometown. Come back and see us again next week. God bless.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.